Hi, I'm Deb of Quite Clever Quilting. So excited that you've come to join me today. We're going to be making the Bodacious block called capital T variation. We'll be working on the half square triangles and also the flying geese. Hope you'll come and join me. So let's get started on our project for the block. Remember, we've labeled each one of our blocks, and that's important to remember and keep things in order. So I'm going to grab my A yellow and my A green, both of them. You just take the sticker off, and I want right sides together, and I'm going to be drawing one diagonal line. So if you saw on my stickers, let me hold one up for you. I've put the letter, the size that I've cut, and an idea of what I'm going to be doing with it. And this one's just showing me I'm cutting it on the diagonal. And that just helps me to do a little faster recall on what I'm doing when I'm making the block. Since I cut out everything first and then I go back and assemble it, it's easier for me to remember. So I'm just going to take it and draw one diagonal line. And once I have the line drawn, I'm going to be doing a scant 1/4 inch on each side of that drawn line. So now that we have the seams drawn, I'm just going to cut straight on the drawn line. Make sure you close your rotary cutter after each cut, and I'll do that for both of them. Now we're going to take all four, lightly spray them, and then press them open. And I'd like to press them open to the green side. So let me just flip these over so it makes it a little easier to do. Taking one, I'm going to put it right on my little drawn line that I have here, and lift it up, and then press. And do that for all four. After I finish pressing these, I'll be squaring them up so I know that they're the exact size that I need. Now let's square these up to 8.5 inches. I'm going to take my ruler, find out where 8.5 is, and square it up that way. This diagonal line, I'm going to make sure is on this diagonal line. So let's go ahead and do that. Line up the diagonal line, making sure that I have it covered down here, put a little bit of the 8.5 covered, and then just trim it up with your rotary cutter. And then turn it and do it again. This time I'm making sure it's exactly on the 8.5 here. The line lines up, and then I can trim. There. There's one done. So let's do the others. So sometimes in blocks, when you're cutting out your fabric to make the block, the directions will tell you like a number and 7/8. I just round it up. So for this block, it said, you know, cut out 8 7/8. Okay, I'm just rounding it up to 9 because I am going to be squaring this up anyway. So whether it's 1/8 or not 1/8 difference, I just like to have that little extra wiggle room. So instead of the number in 7/8, I just round it up to the next full number. And I just find it's a lot faster for cutting and for assembling. So now that I have those four done, those are going to be the four corners in our quilt. And now we're going to be doing the flying geese, which I love. We're going to be using our B yellow and the C background fabrics. And remember I told you I do the little letter, the number, and then what I'm going to be doing with that fabric. And this tells me I'm going to be cutting on a diagonal once. I'm going to be putting 2 of these down for our flying geese. And this makes 4 flying geese at one time, and I really like the method. So I'm just going to draw a diagonal line on this one time. So I'm going to put 2 pins in just to hold it into place. Again, this is just going to be a 1/4 inch seam on both sides of the drawn line. I really like these Bodacious blocks. They're just a lot of fun, super fast as you can see. And you can keep them separate or sew them into a group 4 of them. Makes a little crib size. You throw a border on it, make it lap size, or if put 6 together, it could be a lap size quilt. Because the size, they are honestly super fast. And then let's sew on the other side. So I'm going to cut right on this line to separate them. So cut and then separate them. Now we're just going to, spray and then press it open. Finger press it open and then iron it. And with this one, finger press it open and then iron it. And we have our little mouse ears that I love. And let's do this one. So for our next step, we take the last 2 of these and right sides together, snuggle them together like this, and then we're going to draw a line from corner to corner and just pin it into place. And I do the same thing with the second one. And when we finish sewing this line, 1/4 inch, scant 1/4 inch on each side of the drawn line, we'll have 4 flying geese. So let's sew these together. I love my little Singer featherweight. It just does straight stitch forward and back, and that's all I need for these quilting projects. The other reason why I like it, it's my little travel machine if I am going to a friend's house to quilt or on a retreat. This is my little grab and go. So we have those sewn, and I'm going to cut on the diagonal, on the drawn line. We're gonna press these open. But I like to line them up first. Just spray on the line, lift up, and press. 1 flying goose. 2. See how fast these are? I just love it. 3, and here comes number 4. All right, now let's get these squared up. So let's think about it for a second. I want to figure out how big to cut these. I know the answer, but I want to share with you how you get to it. So if you're doing a project and you're not sure of the answer, you can figure it out. I cut these at 8.5, or squared them up. So I know the number is 8.5 for my flying geese. But this is half of this size. So I know that the width is going to be 8.5 and the height is going to be 4.5. Because my finished block is 8 across. Let me hold this up. The finished block is going to be 8 inches. So I need a half an inch added on, 1/4 inch on each side. So this one is finished at 8 and the height is finished at 4. So I have to add a half an inch on, so it's going to be 4.5. So 8.5 by 4.5 is what I'm looking for when I square this up. The one thing I'm going to be looking for is making sure that I have a good 1/4 inch between the point and the top. The point and the edge of the fabric. So right now I'm just concerned about where the 1/4 inch is on here. Is it straight or not? So I make sure it's solidly on the 1/4 inch. And it is good. So I'm going to trim this up, flip it around. There's the 1/4 inch right here. There's 4.5, and I have my diagonal line lined up. So I'm going to trim it here. And then I can trim up this side at 8.5. There. Okay, you're going to do that for all 4. So So now we have the 4 flying geese done. Now we just need to do that one more time for the other flying geese. So this is going to be the goose portion of it. This is the sky portion of it. So 1, 2, and then we're going to draw the line. Hopefully this will show up since it's dark on dark fabric. Let's see. The answer is yes. And then remember, we're going to pin here and down here. If you need to put more pins on, that's fine. Put on however many you need to make yourself successful. So now I'm going to do scant 1/4 inch down, scant 1/4 inch back up. So I did the sewn on both sides of that line, and let's cut it to open it up. I just place the ruler directly on top of the drawn line and cut. Now I'm going to look for the mouse ears. You know I like them. So that's what they look like. Now we're going to put this block on top, snuggle it up into the corner, and draw a line from corner to corner. I'm going to do that on both pieces. And once my line is drawn, I'm going to put a pin in it to hold it in place so I can sew it down. Now I'm going to cut on the drawn line. There's 2, and here's 2. There. So I have 4 of them done now, and I'm just going to spray them and press them open. And then we'll be ready to assemble the block. And we just square these up real quick. I'm going to find 4 1/4 for the center of the block and trim it up. And turn it around. Now I have the diagonal line that I can use. 4 1/4. It's going to be 4 1/2 the height. Get the whole thing underneath there. 4 1/2 height. Line up on the diagonal and just trim it up. There. So there's 1. And we'll do the other 3 real quick. It's worth taking extra second or 2 to make sure you are lined up for accuracy. So 4 1/4 is the halfway point. So I'm going to put that right where the point of the goose is. I'm glancing around to make sure that I cover the 8 1/2 and the 4 1/2, and I have at least a 1/4 inch at the top. And then I trim up. Turn the block. I'm going to make sure the 4 1/2 and 8 1/2 line up on the block itself now. And I'm also looking at the diagonal to make sure the diagonal line lines up along the goose side. Okay, so we have the 4 flying geese done. We have these 4 done. We have 4 half square triangles, and then we have D, the centerpiece. So let's assemble this. So our first step after we've laid this whole thing out is to sew the flying geese together. So they'll be the 8 1/2 by 8 1/2 also. So there's my block that I'm going to be assembling. Again, I'm going to be sewing the flying geese together first, so I can collect all of those, sew the 1/4 inch seam, and press them open. So I'm just going to flip these over. I want to sew so that the point of the flying goose is what I'm going to be sewing through. So I'm just going to gather these up, sew the 1/4 inch seam, and then press them open. So I'm slowing down to make sure that my needle is going to go straight to the right, just a hair to the right of that thread on the goose point. I know that sounds odd, but it really does give you a perfect goose point. So I've sewn all 4 of them together in a chain stitch, so you can see nice little flags. So I'm going to cut them apart and then just press them open. And I'm going to press them open to this side. So let me just, and the reason is it's just a personal thing. It has a point here, so if I try to open it, press it open towards the point, it kind of makes it bulky. So I'm going to press it the other way, away from the point, so there's not as much bulk. There. Now they go right back in place, and we're ready to continue on. Now we're just going to simply fold these over on each other and sew the seam here, and then sew these seams together. So let's do that. Remember, when we're sewing, we want to make sure that we line up across here and also down along the side. Just keeps everything a little straighter for you. I just love these blocks. They're nice, bold, bright. So we finished sewing them, and they're again chained together. So I'm just going to put them down here and flip them open. Just going to do a quick check to make sure my pattern is still correct, and it is, so I'm happy. So now I'm going to sew this onto the side. I'm not going to cut these threads apart this time, so that I can show you how to keep it all together. So for this style, I'm just going to, instead of trying to gather them up because I still have them connected, I'm just going to put a pin in this one so I remember that those two are together and they stay together. And I'm going to put a pin in this one so it stays together. So I'm going to start with this and sew 1/4 inch again. Line up the bottom corners. Check to make sure it's straight across the top. So now we have it all sewn together vertically, and it looks like this. So you can see that there are still threads attached, which is great, because now I don't have to worry about is it right or not. So all I need to do now is press and then flip it and sew it the horizontals. So remember, I said before I would prefer not to sew into a point, so I'm going to be pressing towards the solid blue, and I'm going to be pressing away from the flying geese. So always away from the flying geese for this project. So let's get that done. I like to press on the top whenever possible. Just gives it, I think, a little better finish. So I have them all pressed. Now I'm just going to sew these last 2 seams on, and we are done. So the reason why I pressed away from the flying geese on each one is so that I can snuggle these little intersections together. If you're a beginner quilter, you might want to just throw a pin right after you've snuggled it together. Put a pin in right on that line so you know it's straight. And I'll do that so you can see. Snuggled it together. I go right into the seam. Okay, and then I'm going to go right back out into that seam again. And then on the back I can check to make sure that it is straight. So I've sewn the 2 seams together, and this is what we have so far. So let me just press it open and we'll see how it looks. So this is what we did today. So this was the capital T block, or variation of it. Thank you so much for joining us on Quite Clever Quilting. I'm Deb. I hope you'll join me next time on another quilting adventure.